We begin the story with Sasha running excitedly up to her friend Heiss, while holding in her hands a large open book, displaying her newly received blessing. With a huge smile, she hugged him tightly and proudly told him that her blessing was Master of the Sword. Heiss was very happy for her and congratulated her enthusiastically, saying, "Congratulations, Sasha." Shortly afterwards, Sasha reminded Heiss that it was now his turn to receive his blessing. With a determined look on his face, Heiss replied confidently that he would also receive an incredible blessing. He said that after that, the two of them would be able to go on adventures together. Sasha smiled hopefully and said that they would be one step closer to realizing their dream. Heiss agreed firmly, saying, "Finally, yes." In a flashback, the two met in front of their parents' graves. Under the rain, in silence, and with sadness in his eyes, Heiss called out for Sasha and his dead parents. With tears streaming down his face, he promised that the two of them would form the best and strongest team and help many people. He declared that they would do this so that no one else would have to go through what they had. In the hall, an older man said it was Heiss's turn, and it was explained to us that in that world, all people pass the test and receive their blessings when they turn 12. These blessings were powers granted by God to humans. Sasha had already received hers. Now it was Heiss's turn. To find out what his blessing was, Heiss needed to look in the Tome of Blessings, a holy book that revealed the abilities that each blessing conferred. With her heart racing and a clear goal in mind, Heiss opened the book and the pages began to open, searching for the name of her blessing. Suddenly, something flashed before him and a page stood out. He touched it with his hand and then saw the name of his blessing, Master of Arms. Heiss was confused by the title and whispered, not quite understanding, "What is that?" Worried, he called the older man, called Geist, to ask what the blessing meant. Geist didn't know either. When Sasha read the name, he thought it was strange and asked if it was really Master of Arms. Everyone there was surprised and confused. While they were trying to understand what the blessing meant, Geist commented that since no one knew what it did, perhaps Heiss couldn't use it. He then, still without an answer, remained silent, trying to understand what would come next. 2 years had passed since the day Heiss received his blessing. Now he was walking breathlessly along a mountain trail, carrying a huge backpack. He was accompanied by other members of the group, but it was clear that he was struggling to keep up. Sweaty and tired, he pressed on. Reynold, deputy leader of the group, and someone older and more experienced, noticed Heiss's effort and asked if he was holding up well. Heiss quickly replied that everything was fine and that he could still keep going. Reynold smiled, saying that they were almost at their destination. A female warrior from the team was watching the conversation, while Reynold commented with a "Got it." Sasha, now leader of the sacred group, ordered a 30-minute rest break. Heiss confirmed the order and tried to be helpful, but Sasha firmly interrupted him, saying that if he fainted there, no one would be able to protect him. She explained that if someone had to carry his luggage, the group would be vulnerable. Meanwhile, Robin, another member of the team, offered to help carry some things. She tried to cheer Heiss up, but Piazzolla, with a wry smile, mocked him by saying that he couldn't even use his own blessing and was already trying to show off. Tycoon, another member, just watched the situation in silence. Sasha then spoke with authority, explaining that the mission they were carrying out was very important for Team Sacred's ranking, and that any mistakes could jeopardize the evaluation. Robin agreed, but said he could still help. Heiss thanked Robin with a kind smile, saying that at least he could do that. Even so, Sasha insisted that he rest and not overload himself. As he rested, Heiss reflected on his situation. It had been 2 years since he had received his blessing, but to this day he had been unable to use it. Despite this, he had formed a group with Sasha, and over time, other members had joined. Sasha was now classified as an individual rank A adventurer, while the sacred group was rank B among the teams. Heiss, on the other hand, saw himself as no more than a porter, unable to fight or use his own blessing. While the others stood out, he felt he was just getting in the way. Despite his heavy thoughts, Reynold approached him and encouraged him not to lose heart, placing his hand on his shoulder in a gesture of support. Heiss thanked him, but continued to clench his fists in silence, hiding his frustration inside. During a more private conversation, Sasha was called over by Reynold, who asked how Heiss was doing. Reynold noted that the boy looked very exhausted, but he still believed that they would be able to complete the mission without any problems. So he asked if they had decided what to do. Sasha, looking serious and worried, replied that yes, they had made a decision. Meanwhile, at the entrance to a dark cave, Heiss looked up startled to realize that they were facing the lair of the Snake Queen, a rank A monster. He wondered if they were really going to face her. Sasha then gathered the group together and explained the battle plan. She said she would go in first and face the creature directly. Tycoon and Robin would provide combat support, while Reynolds would protect the rear. Piazzolla, as the healer, would be safe at the back. Heist tried to join in and asked what he would do, but Sasha was direct and told him to wait outside. Even though he was disappointed, Heist just clenched his fists and accepted in silence. Tycoon began to prepare a support spell, and the narrator explained that his blessing was wise, allowing him to use various types of magic, especially support and healing spells. With everyone in place, Sasha gave the command firmly. "Let's go!" The group headed towards the cave, prepared to face the enemy. Soon an enormous snake emerged from the darkness, causing the ground to shake. It was the Snake Queen, a giant monster with thick scales and ferocious eyes. Sasha took the lead without hesitation. With her sword in hand, she advanced decisively, saying coolly that the enemy would have to die right there. Heist, watching from afar, was once again impressed by his friend's skill. Even though he had seen it before, he still marveled at her strength. The narration then explained that Sasha's blessing, called Master of the Sword, made her incredibly skilled whenever she wielded a sword. This blessing increased her strength and technique, allowing her to completely dominate the battlefield, making her a truly elite warrior. The battle against the Snake Queen began with Sasha leading the advance. She moved with extreme precision, channeling magical power to strengthen her sword and shield. This was one of the most impressive points of her Master of the Sword blessing, the ability to use magic at will to amplify her own equipment. With this power, Sasha was among the bearers of the 16 Master Blessings known in that world. While Sasha advanced alone against the monster, the other members of the group took up positions. Tycoon, Robin, Piazzolla, and Reynolds took up their roles. But in the middle of the fight, something unexpected happened. The Cobra Queen advanced straight at them, and Reynolds used his shield breaker ability and managed to land a direct blow. Piazzolla, observing the scene, lightly mocked him, saying that even though he was the master of the shield, he had let the enemy get too close. Reynolds was speechless at the criticism, but before he could reply, he realized something terrible. The snake was about to attack Heist, who was still carrying his luggage, and was distracted further back. Heist was walking along, unaware of the danger, when he suddenly heard a strange sound coming from above. When he looked back, he saw the snake leaping towards him with its mouth open, ready to strike. The fright was so great that he could barely react. But at the last moment, Sasha appeared and saved him, destroying the creature's head with one powerful blow. Falling to the ground, Heist looked at Sasha, frightened and ashamed. Still catching his breath, he shyly thanked her for saving him. He tried to say that he wanted to help too, but couldn't complete the sentence. Sasha, angry and exhausted, shouted at him to stop causing trouble and just stay put. Meanwhile, the other members of the group were exploring the cave and found human remains on the floor. Reynolds warned the others that there were bones there and suggested that they take as many as possible back to the guild to report. Heist just stood there, watching the movement, feeling the weight of being just a burden within the team. After the battle was over, the group began collecting evidence of the monster's subjugation. Sasha said that only the core of the Snake Queen would be needed to present to the guild. While the others were organizing, Heist wandered off a bit and found a curious object among the rubble. It was an old book with a thick, mysterious cover. Intrigued, he picked it up and wondered what it could be. Sasha shouted for him to stop fidgeting and start packing his things. Smiling ungraciously, Heist replied with a "sorry" and hid the book among his belongings. Later, back at base, he examined the book more closely. On one of the pages, there was a strange image, resembling a weapon called Desert Eagle. The letters were in an unknown language. The whole thing awoke a familiar feeling in Heist, the same one he felt when he received his blessing. The boy began to think that perhaps the book was the key he needed to finally understand his blessing. He was excited by the idea of trying to decipher the contents little by little, hoping that it would awaken something within him. Excited, he entered the room where the group was gathered and tried to share his discovery. But before he could explain, Sasha stood up and coldly and directly told him that he should leave the team. The shock was immediate. Heist was speechless, trying to understand if he had heard correctly. He asked, surprised, about the promise they had made in the past, remembering when they had dreamed of helping others together. Sasha replied that she hadn't forgotten, but that now the sacred team was about to be promoted to A rank. She said that she intended to make it the best team of all, and that if Heist stayed on, he would only be a burden. As far as she was concerned, he would hinder the group's progress. Sasha then threw a bag of coins on the floor and asked him to use the money on the way home. Reynolds, though uncomfortable, tried to console Heist with a smile, saying that they would do their best to take the team's name so far that even their village would hear about them. With a tightness in his chest, Heist lowered his head and wondered silently if there really was no place for him in the group. When he he commented that perhaps Reynolds was anxious to see him go, Reynolds was surprised and tried to reply, but Heiss had already noticed the mood and judgment around him. Robin couldn't keep quiet any longer. With a trembling voice and raised arms, she declared that she was against Heiss leaving. She reminded the others that his blessing was also of the master type, and that perhaps one day they would discover his true potential. Sasha remained silent, but Reynolds responded firmly, saying that the group's battles would only get more dangerous from then on. Robin insisted, asking when that day would come. Reynolds ignored her and said that Heiss was no longer needed in the sacred group. He stepped forward and, without beating around the bush, officially declared that Heiss was expelled from the team. Surprised and not knowing how to react, Heiss just listened as Reynolds offered one last helping hand, a sum of money as a farewell gift. But Heiss refused. He grabbed the package and threw it on the ground, shouting that he didn't need it. He then declared that he would leave the group, but that he would never give up. With his fists clenched, Heiss shouted that he didn't want to become an adventurer like Sasha, who abandons the weak to climb the ranks. The harsh words hit Sasha hard, and he was unable to react, just staring at the coins lying on the ground. With restrained tears and determination in his eyes, Heiss turned his back and left, slamming the door hard. Reynolds called Sasha's name, but she remained motionless, silent. Later, Sasha apologized to Reynolds for getting him involved. He replied that it was fine. Sitting outside in the moonlight, he asked her if she was sure she wanted to go through with it. Sasha said yes. Even if Heiss hated her forever, she would rather see him alive than die in battle. 2 months had passed. Heiss's story was about to take a new turn. 2 months after being expelled from the sacred group, Heiss was still trying to get stronger on his own. That day he had defeated 20 goblins on his own, which was his best result yet, but he knew it still wasn't enough. Determined, he went into a tavern, reflecting on how he needed to keep training. As soon as he entered, however, all eyes began to turn on him. A group of adventurers recognized him and started whispering. They commented that he had been expelled from Sacred, that he was now just a herb gatherer, and that Sasha and the others probably didn't like him anymore. One of them even said that Heiss was the shame of the old group. Even hearing everything, Heiss continued walking in silence. But inside, his frustration was growing, and he clenched his fist tightly. Soon after, while walking, Heiss came across Sasha, who suddenly appeared in front of him. The two stood face to face. Sasha called him by name, and her gaze was serious, but without hostility. Reynolds and the other members of the sacred group were standing nearby, watching the scene. Sasha then began to explain. She asked him to listen to her. She said that to the south of there, in the direction of the desert kingdom of Dizora, there was an area of marshland where white clover flowers grew, an ingredient used in healing potions. She explained that these flowers were rare and were blooming at the moment. Heiss just listened in silence. Sasha finished her explanation by saying that that was all, and walked away. Not knowing exactly what to think, Heiss pondered the information. In his mind, there was the image of the flower that Sasha had mentioned, and the direction he now needed to take. As he walked back, Heiss became pensive. He began to wonder if Sasha and the others were somehow trying to help him, even from a distance. He remembered that white clover flowers were valuable, used in healing potions, and also sold for a good price. This could be a good opportunity. With that thought, he began to wonder if perhaps Sasha still cared. Even if they were no longer in the same group, perhaps that warning about the flowers had been a form of protection in disguise. Determined, he decided that he would leave the next morning. The next day, Heiss arrived in the marshes of the Dizara region. When he came across an immense field covered in white flowers, his eyes filled with admiration. He was struck by the beauty of the place and smiled. Carefully, he began to pick the flowers, filling his basket. As he worked, he reflected that, even though he was alone now, there was still hope that his and Sasha's dream might one day come true. As he picked, he thought that, at the very least, he should be grateful for that tip. Then suddenly, something strange happened. The sky darkened quickly without warning. He looked around, confused, and noticed a giant shadow looming above him. As he looked up, his eyes went wide with shock. A huge monster, with the appearance of a dragon or reptilian beast, was falling from the sky, straight towards him. Surprised, and with no time to think, Heiss could only become indignant at what he was seeing. The huge monster fell in front of Heiss with a deafening roar, causing the ground to shake. The young man, paralyzed with fear, could barely react. He tried to take a step back, but his body was shaking. His eyes were fixed on the creature's sharp teeth, and the only thing he could think of was that he had to get away as quickly as possible. The dragon charged, and Heiss threw himself to the side, rolling on the ground among the flowers. As he tried to escape, he screamed, but his voice was mixed with the deafening sound of the imminent battle. The monster advanced with brutality, and Heiss could hardly breathe for panic's sake. He was hit by a blow that launched him into the air. His body hit the ground hard, and he rolled among the flowers until he came to a stop next to a rock. Gasping, dirty and bruised, he looked around and began to doubt. He wondered if that place wasn't actually the dragon's own territory. And then the worst thought crossed his mind. Had Sasha sent him there on purpose? As the monster approached once again, Heiss, sweating and wounded, began to question everything. He wondered if, after all, he was really just a burden to Sasha. Physical and emotional pain mixed as he remembered the harsh words he had heard. It all echoed echoed in his mind. Desperate, his body bleeding, and the monster getting closer, Heiss shouted that he didn't want to die. He repeated the phrase as if it were a prayer, as if he could protect himself with words. His eyes then fixed on a spot on the ground, the strange book he had found earlier, now open and glowing. Suddenly, an intense light emerged from him. Something inside Heiss reacted, and his body was enveloped in a powerful glow. The book trembled in his hand as the wind spiraled around him. For a moment, everything stopped. The fear, the pain, the doubt, and then something inside him awoke. The moment the light enveloped Heiss, something awoke inside him. Before his eyes, a strange weapon materialized, something he had never seen before, but which he recognized instinctively. It was a grenade launcher, the M79 grenade launcher. Even without having learned anything about it, his body knew exactly how to use it. Surprised, but filled with an unshakable certainty, Heiss held the gun and muttered that he could feel it. He knew he could kill the monster with it. As the dragon advanced with fury, Heiss raised the gun and pointed it directly at him. He told himself that all he had to do was pull the trigger, and an explosion would erupt. With sudden confidence, he fired. The projectile flew straight into the mouth of the creature, which roared, ready to attack. A second later, the explosion happened. The impact was violent. The shockwave and the debris destroyed a large part of the monster's body, throwing it away in pieces. Heiss fell to his knees, panting, watching the now silent field. In his mind, a single phrase echoed, "Master of Arms. This is my blessing." The book still open in front of him confirmed the truth. The weapon he had used was not of this world, and yet it was part of his destiny. With his body trembling, Heiss fell into a sitting position. Gradually, the tension gave way to nervous laughter. He laughed out loud, bitterly, as tears and sweat poured down his face. Between laughs, he muttered that Sasha had betrayed him. The image of her smiling returned to his mind, now distorted by pain. He then clutched his face with his blood-stained hand and promised himself, with a look full of anger and hurt, "I won't forget this." At the guild headquarters, Geist, the guild master, congratulated the sacred group on officially reaching rank A. Reynold and Piazzolla thanked him respectfully. But soon after, Geist changed the subject and casually asked about Heiss. Sasha was surprised by the question and wanted to know why. Geist then commented that a lot of bad rumors had been circulating about the boy lately. They said that he was still trying to make it as a solo adventurer, even without a group or support, and that people were mocking him for it. Worse still, there were rumors that Sasha and the others from Sacred were deliberately trying to demean him or put him in danger in order to get rid of him. Sasha was surprised and denied it vehemently. Reynold also protested, shocked by the insinuation. Geist quickly reassured them, saying that he knew they wouldn't do that, but warned that the more famous they became, the more envy and suspicion would arise, especially around ex-members. The conversation continued, and Geist commented that he had heard that Heiss was still determined to pursue his childhood dream. Sasha then revealed, somewhat guiltily, that she herself had pointed out to him a good place to gather herbs, the swamps near the desert kingdom of Dazara. At that moment, Geist dropped his cup as he realized how serious the information was. He stood up startled and asked if she was talking about the small swamps in the area. Sasha confirmed without understanding the reaction. Geist then urgently revealed that this place was the territory of a rank SS Plus monster, the Black Elder Dragon, one of the most dangerous in existence. Before they could process the information, a guild employee ran in and announced that there was an emergency. Geist ordered everyone to go downstairs immediately. Sasha obeyed, her heart already pounding. As they descended the guild staircase, everyone was confronted with an unbelievable scene. Heiss, covered in blood and wounds, was dragging the corpse of the Black Dragon's head alone. Silence spread through the room. The sacred group, including Sasha and Reynolds, stood paralyzed. Wide-eyed, Sasha could only stammer out his name. Heiss! At the center of all the stares and murmurs, Heiss just stared back without saying a word, but his gaze, now dark and determined, made it clear that he was no longer the same. In the main hall of the guild, everyone was still in shock at the arrival of Heiss and the head of the defeated dragon. But the silence was broken when he looked directly at Sasha and spoke bitterly. With a trembling voice, he asked her if she hated him that much. He said that if her intention was to see him dead, then unfortunately the plan had failed because he had survived. Sasha didn't understand, confused, and tried to ask what he was saying. But Heiss didn't give her any space. He shouted that he knew very well what she had done and that he would not accept any more lies. He then pointed to the creature's head lying on the ground and proudly stated that he had killed the dragon single-handedly. The anger in his eyes was mixed with hurt. He confessed that, for a brief moment, he had believed that Sasha still believed in him, that she supported him. But now, he felt it had all been an illusion. He said he was tired of trusting people. Heiss then shouted with all the strength in his chest that he didn't need anyone anymore. He would become the strongest, using only his own strength. As everyone watched in amazement, he declared that he was determined to go it alone from now on. In the middle of his speech, fatigue and his injuries began to take their toll. Staggering, he tried to continue, but fell to his knees. Still, with difficulty, he looked at Sasha one last time and tried to say something. But before he could finish, his eyes eyes closed and he collapsed to the floor, unconscious. Sasha ran towards him, calling out to him in a panic, screaming his name in desperation. The sacred group stood motionless, overcome by a mixed feeling of guilt, surprise, and helplessness at what had just happened. 2 years had passed since the day Heiss collapsed in the guild hall after facing the Elder Dragon. Now he was no longer the helpless boy who depended on others. He had become a rank S adventurer, known as the Herald of Darkness. His look was unrecognizable. With an eye patch, scars on his face, and a dark cloak decorated with runic symbols, Heiss exuded confidence and coolness. He showed up in town again, going to the guild reception to renew his stay for another month, breakfast included. The attendant was surprised to see him there, considering his fame and power. He asked why someone like him would choose such simple accommodation, but Heiss calmly replied that, precisely because it was such an unexpected place for someone of his level, it was the perfect hideaway. In the newspaper, he saw that Sasha, now called Brynhild, the Silver Valkyrie, had also reached the S rank. Her old group, Sacred, had become even more influential, and applications to join the team were full. Heiss just watched the news with a blank stare, without expressing any emotion. Soon after, he was summoned to the guildmaster's office. Geist, who was now identified as one of the strongest in unarmed combat and also an S rank, wanted to talk to him. Heiss walked in casually, took a sip of tea, and asked the reason for the call. Geist commented, almost incredulously, that he had heard that Heiss had single-handedly defeated a mithril ogre, an S+ level creature. Heiss confirmed it simply, without bragging. He said that he had learned well, and joked that it was all thanks to his training with Geist. The guildmaster, surprised and laughing, replied that he had never taught anything so absurd. Even surrounded by unbelievable feats, Heiss kept a low profile and didn't let himself get carried away by fame. But the darkness in his eyes and his reserved posture made it clear that something inside him had changed forever. While reflecting on his journey, Heiss received a new mission. He had been officially recognized as an S-rank adventurer. Monster rankings ranged from F to SSS, but the highest ever seen in the field was SS rank. Heiss, however, had beaten creatures at this level, and even beyond. Even so, when he delivered more materials to the guild, he received an unexpected recommendation. Geist, the guildmaster, handed him a solemn invitation, sealed with the seal of royalty. It was the invitation to the official rank S Adventurer ceremony, a rare and noble event. Heiss was surprised that the royal family was involved, but Geist explained that the first king had also been the first rank S Adventurer, and the tradition had continued ever since. To be officially recognized, Heiss would have to accept a rank S mission directly at the ceremony. Only then would his name enter the official records. It was then that Geist mentioned something that made the mood change. Sasha would be there too. Hearing her name, Heiss's eyes narrowed. He stated firmly and without hesitation that he could never forgive her. Geist tried to explain that Sasha had kicked him out of the group to protect him. He said that she didn't want to see him get hurt, and that it had all been a hard choice, but Heiss couldn't accept it. He remembered the cold words she used, the moments of humiliation. As much as his reason understood, his heart still bled. Heiss admitted that he didn't disagree with Sasha's logic, to abandon the weak in order to make the group stronger. He even believed that this was the only way for the sacred group to become the most powerful. But it still didn't erase the pain of rejection. Rising decisively, Heiss declared that he would continue alone. He said that he no longer trusted anyone, and that companions meant nothing to him. His goal now was to follow his own path to the top, without depending on anyone. With a cold, firm gaze, he said goodbye to Geist and left the place. The old master just watched him leave through the window, reflecting in silence. Despite all the strength Heiss had gained, he was still just a boy carrying deep sorrows. Months had passed since the S-rank ceremony. Now Heiss and Sasha were together again, but not by choice. The two stood before the royalty of the Kingdom of Hybelk, attending the official call of the crown. The current king, His Majesty Barbaros, the 13th to occupy the throne, received them personally. With formality, the king announced that both of them, as officially recognized rank S adventurers, would receive their first direct missions from the kingdom. Sasha accepted respectfully, while Heiss limited himself to a brief reply, keeping his posture cool and aloof. Soon after, the first prince, Cress, and the first princess, Miwane, were introduced. Cress announced that Sasha would be responsible for defeating crystal golems that had appeared in the mines to the south of the kingdom, a threat that was rapidly intensifying. To everyone's surprise, the prince himself offered to accompany Sasha on the mission. Sasha firmly accepted the task. Then it was Heiss's turn to receive his order. Princess Mayuani, cheerful and smiling, took over the delivery. With great enthusiasm, she explained that Heiss's mission would be to collect the rare eternal moongrass, a sacred plant used to create create spiritual elixirs. The plant could only be found in the sacred mountains of Gagazia, within the forest territory of the Kingdom of Igdora, east of Hai Belk. Before Heiss could reply, Mayuani happily added that she herself would accompany him on the mission. It would be her first official adventure. Upon hearing this, Heiss kept a serious look on his face, showing no emotion, and simply replied dryly, "I accept the mission." With all eyes on him, Heiss firmly refused to allow Princess Mayuani on his mission. In a direct voice and without hesitation, he declared that he would not allow Her Highness to accompany him. The hall fell silent. Mayuani froze in surprise. Cress, Sasha, and even the king were stunned by her boldness. Heiss explained his decision. He said that the region of Gagazia was dangerous, full of ferocious monsters, and that the presence of the princess would reduce his chances of success by at least 20%. Besides, protecting someone so important would put her life at risk, and he wouldn't accept bearing that responsibility. Even when Mayuani questioned his decision, asking for justification, Heiss was straightforward. He worked alone. No companions, no distractions. He asked the king for formal permission to go on his mission alone. After a few moments of silence, King Barbaros let out a powerful laugh that echoed through the hall. Never before had an adventurer denied the company of a member of the royal family, let alone so decisively. But, to everyone's surprise, the king didn't take offense. Instead, he showed respect. He recognized that Heiss had accepted and completed several Rank S missions completely alone. His request was legitimate. Even with the opposition of Mayuani, who begged for her first adventure, the king stood firm. He said he would make an exception and forbade the princess to accompany him. She was visibly frustrated, holding back her anger and disappointment as she clenched her fists in silence. The king then declared the formal ceremony over, officially ending the appointment and handing over of the missions. Heiss, now officially invested as an elite adventurer, recognized by royalty, was ready to set off on another journey, again, alone. After the official ceremony, a relaxed reception was organized in the castle. While the servants prepared dinner, King Barbaros chatted animatedly with Geist. The two toasted with glasses in hand, laughing at Heiss's behavior. The king remarked that the boy was truly unique, and Geist, although more reserved, silently agreed, visibly worried. Meanwhile, the rest of the guests mingled with smiles and fine food. Princess Mayuani, however, had not yet accepted the decision that prevented her from accompanying Heiss. Determined, she went straight to Sasha, with her hands clenched and her eyes shining with desire. Mayuani asked to accompany Sasha on her mission against the golems. She said it would be her first adventure and that she was determined to prove herself. Sasha, without hesitation, replied with a gentle smile, saying that it wouldn't be a problem. Cress, her brother, was clearly annoyed and tried to scold her for acting on impulse, but Sasha reassured everyone lightly. She said that Mayuani wasn't in the way. At the back of the hall, Heiss watched everything in silence. When he saw Mayuani approaching Sasha and the sacred group, his mind was seized by memories, quick images of when he too was part of that team. His eyes wide and his fists slowly clenching, Heiss looked away, swallowing the bitterness he still carried. Even now, seeing them smiling together, he couldn't erase the pain he felt at being left behind. With a resigned sigh, he muttered that it might be a good idea to go out for a drink. But just as he turned his back on the hall, a voice called out to him. Someone had noticed that he was about to leave the party. Outside the castle, in the moonlight, Heiss walked in silence after the ceremony until he was called by a familiar voice. It was Sasha. With hesitant steps, she approached and asked to talk, just the two of them. Heiss stopped for a moment, but didn't turn around. Sasha, her eyes full of regret, said she wanted to apologize, something she had been holding back for a long time. But before he could explain, Heiss replied coldly, saying that there was nothing more between them worth talking about. For him, what needed to be said had already been ignored for years. Still, Sasha insisted. She said she didn't want to carry that guilt in silence any longer. But Heiss couldn't hold back his anger any longer. He laughed ironically and then exploded into screams. Wide-eyed and shaking with fury, he asked why she had decided to apologize now after so long. He recalled that for 2 years she had had countless chances to talk to him, that she had remained silent even when he had almost died, that she had had time to rise through the ranks, to lead the sacred group, to receive the applause of the guild, and yet she had never looked back. With every word, Heiss poured out the pain he had been holding in all this time. He shouted that he couldn't accept an apology from someone who had only spoken after so long, when everything had already changed. Sasha, standing in front of him, couldn't say anything. She just listened in silence, with tears in her eyes, as the weight of her choices finally fell with full force. To him, it was just another empty gesture. Sasha tried to explain himself, but his voice failed him. Heiss interrupted her. He said that from that moment on, anything she said no longer meant anything to him. Sasha, her eyes wide and her expression shaken, tried to reach Heiss's arm and hold him. Crying, she finally began to speak truthfully. She admitted that she was afraid. She said that she had exiled him because she thought it was best to protect him, that she thought that by fulfilling their dream, everything would make sense in the end. But her voice trembled, and the words came out in sobs. Heiss, on the other hand, no longer reacted in the same way. He listened to the end, but his eyes were cold. When Sasha spoke of our dream, he let go of her arm and walked away, saying that it was never their dream. It was only hers. He said that she shouldn't use him as an excuse to justify her choices, and that if it was a shared dream, he never felt included in it. And then she concluded firmly, "It's more like your dream, and only yours." Still standing in the rain, Heiss faced Sasha with steady eyes and a voice full of conviction. He said that his new dream was to become the strongest on his own, without depending on anyone, and that, unlike her, he would never discard someone just because they were weak. For him, if being strong meant abandoning others, then he preferred to be alone from the start. His words, like blades, cut deep. Sasha remained silent, overcome with guilt, while the raindrops hid the tears in her eyes. Heiss continued. He said that, whatever her reasons, Sasha had also thrown away the dream they shared. That even though she had done everything with good intentions, the result was the same. She had abandoned him, and now it was too late to recover what had been lost. With his head bowed and his cape soaked, he said that he hoped she would achieve her goal, to make the sacred group the strongest of all, even if he was no longer part of it. He turned his back and began to walk away, saying just one last word. Later, Sasha fell to her knees on the wet floor without the strength to answer him. He walked away without looking back, and in his mind, one certainty formed clearly. No matter how hard I try, we'll never be the same again. On an old page of a grimoire, the legendary plant, eternal moongrass, was described as a rare ingredient for spiritual elixirs. Its most striking feature was its own glow, and it could only be found at the peak of the sacred mountain of Gagazia, within the territory of the forest nation of Igdora. After his discussion with Sasha, Heiss had returned to his inn, taking a deep breath and trying to prepare himself mentally for the next mission. In his room, the essential objects were within reach: his SS Plus black dragonhide cloak, his adventurer's card, the ring with the item box that stored supplies, and on the table, the old book that still held so many mysteries about his blessing. Despite his strength, Heiss still hadn't managed to decipher the full contents of the tome. This bothered him, so he decided to continue accepting missions while improving his skills, and perhaps little by little unlocking the true potential of Weapon Master. At the guild, he arrived early in search of a new mission. The receptionist greeted him politely, telling him that the guild master was in a meeting with Sasha. Nonchalantly, Heiss went to the quest board, looking at the available options. The highest was only rank B, nothing up to his standards. Meanwhile, a figure approached in silence. It was an elf, young with a firm posture and a direct gaze. Her presence attracted Heiss's attention for a moment. Noticing his gaze, she asked if elves were rare in the area. Heiss answered yes, especially outside the forest of Igdora. The elf confirmed that it was indeed unusual for one of her own to leave her homeland. The brief conversation between the two suggested that the mysterious figure might soon have a bigger role to play. Heiss's mission was about to begin. The goal was simple: to collect the very rare eternal moongrass, a plant that glows on its own and is used in spiritual elixirs. However, its location was far from easy: the top of the sacred Gagazia mountain, within the forest of Igdora, sacred elven territory. In his lodgings, Heiss checked his equipment. His cloak, made from the skin of the elder dragon, still served as extremely resistant armor. He also carried his magic ring, with the ability to store objects in stasis, his rank S adventurer's card, and of course, the old book he was still trying to decipher. At the guild, while waiting to see Master Geist, Heiss was attended to by a receptionist, but something unexpected happened. He met again the elf he had seen before, now introducing herself formally. Her name was Priscilla, a rank B adventurer. Priscilla commented that she traveled alone, relying on her own strength. This surprised Heiss, who identified with her attitude. For the first time, he was hearing from someone else the same philosophy he followed: rely only on yourself. When she asked about him, Heiss showed her his S letter bluntly, revealing his mission in Igdora, and immediately regretted it. When she heard this, Priscilla was extremely surprised. She began to question him insistently, attracting attention in the hall. Heiss tried to change the subject, uncomfortable with the situation. Fortunately, he was called by the receptionist to speak to Geist, and he took the opportunity to escape the conversation, just waving a brief "see you later." During the conversation with Geist, the master revealed important information. At the peak of Gagazia mountain, there was an SS plus rank dragon, so dangerous that even the Yggdrasil clan, one of the 4 largest in the world, avoided approaching it. Geist explained that this clan was made up mostly of half-humans, led by the elven heroine Ibis. Unlike guilds, clans could act independently. Before Heiss left, Geist handed him a sealed envelope, a letter of introduction. He said that if Heiss had any problems in Igdora, the letter could serve as support for the Yggdrasil clan. Despite his initial reluctance, Heiss accepted the gift with a simple nod. He said goodbye with his typical coldness and left the room, ready to take another step towards the top, completely alone. Outside the royal capital, Heiss was heading out alone on his mission, but his instincts warned him. He stopped, drew his gun and pointed it in the direction of a slight movement among the trees. Firmly, he asked, "Who's there?" With no response, he fired a warning shot. The sound echoed and a figure emerged from the shadows with its hands raised. It was Priscilla, the elf he had met at the guild. She admitted she had been discovered and said she needed to talk to him. Heiss, suspicious, asked why she was being followed. Priscilla replied that she had a favor to ask, but that it could only be of him. Even in the face of Heiss's immediate refusal, she insisted. He revealed that he also wanted to go to the sacred mountain of Gagazia because his sister was seriously ill. The only ingredient that could save her was eternal moongrass. However, because it was the monster's mating season, entry was forbidden to ordinary adventurers. However, Heiss had one advantage, an official request from the Kingdom of High Belk, which controlled the Igdora forest. With this mission in hand, he would have special permission to enter. Priscilla knew this because she had overheard his conversation with Geist, just as Heiss had with Sasha a few days earlier. Priscilla spoke firmly, saying that he had to save his sister. He begged Heiss to let her accompany him to Gagazia Mountain, if only as a temporary companion. He promised not to be a burden and even offered all the money he had. With determined eyes, she said that even if she died on the way, she was willing to accept. Heiss, however, was straightforward. He said that her motives didn't interest him. But then, with a sigh, he said that he didn't mind if she followed him either, as long as she understood one thing: they weren't companions. If anything happened, she would be on her own. Priscilla accepted without hesitation. She made sure she knew how to protect herself. When Heiss turned his back, she called his name for the first time. She said her name was Priscilla and that she was happy to meet him. Heiss just looked in the corner and moved on. Along the way, the two faced an attack by goblins, and Heiss used his weapon to eliminate them quickly and accurately. Priscilla was impressed and asked if that was the power of his blessing. Heiss confirmed that it was, and explained that his blessing gave him total mastery over otherworldly weapons such as pistols, shotguns, and grenade launchers. In return, Priscilla explained that her own blessing, Spirit Command, allowed her to see and interact with spirits that were not visible to normal people, and that these spirits could help her hide or keep watch, as she did when she overheard the conversation between Heiss and the guildmaster. That night, the two of them set up camp. Priscilla was surprised by the amount of equipment Heiss took from his magic ring, which functioned as an infinite storage. When she asked what he was cooking, Heiss replied that he simply felt like it. She remembered that they weren't even companions, but accepted the gesture. When she tried the food, she was amazed by the taste and asked if he had any experience. Heiss explained that he used to do everything himself, including cooking and taking care of the housework. Priscilla thanked him for the meal and said that, although she had imagined he would be a cold person, she was really grateful to have found him, because now she had a chance to save her sister. Heiss only replied with a silent look and thought to himself that the scene, with a fire and someone by his side, reminded him of something far away, something almost forgotten. The next morning, when they reached an elevated area of the forest, Priscilla pointed to the huge tree visible in the distance. She said that it was the base of the Yggdrasil clan, one of the most powerful in the world, made up mainly of half-humans and led by the elven heroine Ibis. Heiss looked at the tree seriously, knowing that from then on things would become even more dangerous. After several days of travel, Heiss and Priscilla arrived at the main gate of the Igdora Forest Nation, where they were immediately stopped by the guards. When asked, Heiss handed over his entry certificate and explained that he had come at the request of the royal family to access the sacred mountain of Gagazia. The elf guard looked at the documents carefully, but was doubtful when he noticed that Heiss was accompanied. Priscilla, wearing a hooded cloak, tried to keep a low profile. Heiss gave her a quizzical look and whispered in irritation, asking what she was trying to do. She replied in a whisper, asking them to ignore her for the time being. With slight hesitation, Heiss also presented the letter of recommendation written by Geist, the guildmaster, addressed to the Yggdrasil clan. As soon as the elf guard read the contents and saw the official seal, his eyes widened. He asked them to wait for a moment and hurried off. Just then, two older elves appeared and greeted Heiss with respect, saying that the clan master was waiting for him. Heiss complained about the unnecessary fuss, just for handing over a letter, but he couldn't resist the invitation. Priscilla decided to wait outside while the elves led Heiss into the sacred tree. The elf elder explained that Ibis, the leader of the Yggdrasil clan, had more influence than the royalty of Igdora itself, and that it was best not to offend her. The interior of the clan's base, located inside a gigantic living tree, tree was accessed by a magical elevator, something that surprised Heiss because it was unusual in that world. When they reached the top, they were led to a secluded and sacred sanctuary, where Ibis was waiting for them. It was the most important place in the Yggdrasil clan, and there it would be decided whether Heiss would receive support to continue his mission on the mountain. After a long climb up the sacred tree, Heiss finally reached the sanctuary of the Yggdrasil clan, where he was greeted by their leader, the elven heroine Ibis. Upon entering the room, guided by an elder, Heiss was surprised to see a young elf woman with a peaceful appearance, sitting relaxed on a platform, greeting him with a simple welcome. Ibis looked at Heiss curiously and then said casually that he already knew who he was, Geist's disciple. The way she spoke, carefree and smiling, left Heiss confused, as he was expecting a more formal figure. When he asked if she really was the famous Ibis Sama, he thought to himself that she just looked like a girl. Ibis then opened the letter, delivered by Geist, and read aloud that Geist wanted her to help Heiss, but had also written that Heiss would probably refuse her help. On hearing this, Heiss became embarrassed and angry, while Ibis laughed out loud, saying that Geist knew him well. She said that there was something strangely nostalgic about the boy, as she watched him carefully, and even smelled gunpowder coming from him. Curious, she asked him directly if he knew about firearms. Heiss hesitated, surprised that she recognized this so quickly. Ibis explained that, in the past, he had a companion who used similar weapons, so he recognized the smell and presence. That simple mention intrigued Heiss. Heiss introduced himself and handed over the old book he had been carrying since he had awakened his blessing. He asked her directly if she knew it. As soon as she saw the cover, Ibis was silent for a moment until she said with a slight smile that she hadn't imagined that book still existed. Heiss asked if she really recognized it, and Ibis said yes, without hesitation. Leafing through the contents, Ibis revealed that the book was actually the diary of someone called Nobunaga. Heiss asked who this person was, and Ibis explained that Nobunaga was a man who had come from another world, and somehow ended up in that realm. Heiss was surprised to hear this, especially when Ibis said that the book was full of letters from that other world, which she herself couldn't read. She commented that she never knew exactly what Nobunaga wrote, but she knew that he used weapons like Heiss's, which is why she recognized the smell of gunpowder. When Heiss asked if she knew anyone who could translate the content, Ibis was direct. Even if she couldn't read, she found it curious that Heiss was understanding parts of the text on her own. Heiss was surprised to realize that he could now decipher more pages than before. At this, Ibis perked up and asked him with a teasing smile to tell him what he had read. Heiss, a little disconcerted by the approach, hesitated, but Ibis just laughed and said that she didn't need to be offended. She was just curious, because there was something strangely familiar about him. As Heiss showed Ibis the contents of Nobunaga's diary, the leader of the Yggdrasil clan reacted in an unusual way. The text mentioned how adorable Nobunaga found Ibis, comparing her to a cat, and even considered hunting feline monsters just to make a pair of ears and tail as a present for her. Heiss would read these phrases aloud without imagining the impact, and Ibis would become completely unresponsive, ashamed and screaming excessively. He then asked, with a direct and curious tone, if she and Nobunaga had been lovers, which made Ibis wince, confused and angry. Immediately afterwards, she threw herself on top of him and shouted that was enough for today, ending the conversation abruptly and agitatedly. Before leaving, she said aloud that if he needed any more help, he should come back another day. Heiss, back on his way towards sacred Mount Gagazia, reflected on the fact that he was able to read more and more pages of the book, which made him suspect that the ancient object had a mind of its own. Meanwhile, he and Priscilla continued their journey, ever closer to the top of the mountain. At the top of the trail, shrouded in thick fog, the two felt their visibility diminishing. Priscilla remarked that he could barely see, and just then a powerful roar erupted in front of them. A huge, slimy-looking monster revealed itself, breaking through the ground and attacking without warning. Heiss, reacting quickly, fired his magic weapon, shielding Priscilla and fending off the creature with powerful shots. After holding off the initial attack, Heiss concluded that the enemy was taking advantage of the fog to poach, so he activated his power again and readied his weapon carefully, while firmly telling Priscilla to stay alert and keep an eye out for any movement around her. Soon after the fight, while the two were still under the impact of the confrontation, Priscilla looked at Heiss with doubt on her face and asked why he had helped her, even though he had said before that they were not companions. Heiss answered simply, saying that she had told him that her motivation was to save her sister, and that even though he had no obligation to protect her, he also saw no reason not to help her, so he just saw it as a way of repaying her for everything he had learned from her during the journey. Priscilla was surprised, moved and touched, so she smiled sincerely and thanked him. Heiss replied with a short and direct, "You're welcome." But before any moment of peace could pass, a powerful roar echoed through the sky. They both raised their heads and watched the silhouette of a dragon crossing the clouds. Priscilla deduced that the creature was hunting, which meant it was the perfect chance to catch the rare herb eternal moongrass. Without a second thought, she sprinted towards the hillside where the plant grew. Heist called out to her, trying to warn her of the danger, but she answered as she ran, promising to return immediately and deliver the reward later. He tried to catch up with her, but knew he wouldn't be able to stop her in time. Meanwhile, Heist was thinking seriously. He knew that dragons were extremely territorial, and that even if they had gone out hunting, they would return at the slightest sign of invasion. He muttered to himself that she was underestimating the creature. Without wasting any time, he too launched himself towards the site, aware that he had to prevent a disaster. Heist ran down the mist-shrouded slope while trying to catch up with Priscilla. But before he got very far, he was surrounded by several creatures that emerged from the ground like giant worms with gaping mouths and cylindrical bodies. Observing this, he complained aloud in anger and frustration, saying that now this had to happen too, revealing his indignation at yet another obstacle at that critical moment. Meanwhile, Priscilla had made her way up the slope on her own, reached the spot where eternal moongrass was supposed to be, and shouted to herself that she had arrived. She began to search desperately among the rocks and undergrowth, scanning the terrain with wide eyes. But soon her countenance changed to despair. Gasping for breath, she realized that there was nothing left, not a single sample of the plant, and then began to mutter that without it she wouldn't be able to make the elixir that would save her sister. Feeling defeated, she fell to her knees on the floor, her expression tearful and her voice choked, begging her sister's forgiveness for not being able to keep her promise. It was at that moment that an overwhelming roar cut through the sky, shaking the ground and making Priscilla look up with eyes wide with sheer panic. A colossal creature appeared before her, descending with force from the sky. It was the green elephant dragon, an SS+ rank beast with a grotesque appearance, mottled skin and huge fangs, which landed in front of the elf with hostile intent, staring straight at her with its glowing eyes. Priscilla came face to face with the green elephant dragon, which roared loudly and opened its huge mouth in an attempt to intimidate her, while the surrounding rocks shook with the impact of the sound. Even though her body was stiff with fear, she squeezed her eyes shut and held her spear tightly, determined to fight. In thought, she reasoned that if she managed to wound the creature and distract it long enough, she might be able to escape alive. With an agile movement, she concentrated the spiritual energy around the spear and launched a direct attack against the dragon's head, aiming to hit a vital spot. The spear cut through the air with speed and force, but when it hit its target, the creature's skin only quivered slightly, as if the impact had caused no real damage. Surprised, Priscilla widened her eyes and concluded that the spiritual energy had had no effect on that enemy. Confused and frightened, she prepared to launch a more powerful attack, but before she could act, the creature advanced. The monster roared even more violently, its throat vibrating like thunder, and then launched its gigantic tongue towards Priscilla, who tried to dodge it. She was thrown high into the air, but before she could recover, she was enveloped and immobilized by the creature's slimy tongue. The force with which she was gripped made her cry out in pain, and her body was pinned down and lifted up as if she were just a helpless prey, completely at the mercy of the enemy. Priscilla screamed as his body was crushed by the force of the green elephant dragon's tentacle. But in an instant, a shot exploded with force, hitting the creature directly, causing blood to spurt out. Heist appeared on the battlefield with a furious expression, taking precise aim and firing again to free Priscilla, who fell panting to the ground. Priscilla, still surprised to see him there, asked what he was doing in that place, and Heist, panting and irritated, shouted to ask why she had been so stupid to run alone. Without wasting any time, he pushed her away from the creature and ordered her to stay behind while he took the front line. He quickly reloaded his gun and began machine gunning the enemy with a burst of bullets, noticing that, despite the impact, the shots weren't doing enough lethal damage. Determined, he switched weapons and began to use his rifle for heavier attacks. With each shot echoing loudly in the air, the bullets penetrated the dragon's body, which roared in pain and reacted violently. But Heist remained calm and reloaded quickly, firing without stopping. His face showed concentration, and his movements were precise, as if he were in total tune with the weapons he was using. When the monster tried to counterattack, Heist leapt sideways, reloaded with agility, and fired a direct shot at the center of the creature's head, causing it to recoil and scream even louder. After the green elephant dragon's body collapsed to the ground with a huge thud, Heist remained alert, panting to see if the monster was really dead. Priscilla, still trembling, asked if the creature had been defeated, and Heist replied doubtfully, saying that it couldn't have been that easy. He looked at her and asked if she was all right, and after a moment, she answered with a yes. Heiss, still in shock at what had just happened. Then Priscilla lowered her gaze and, embarrassed, asked why Heiss had run there, even after telling her to wait. Heiss didn't answer right away, and she, her face flushed, wondered if he had gone to save her of his own free will. Heiss, catching his breath, simply said that it was getting smelly in there, and that they'd better leave. Priscilla answered shyly, still visibly touched by his attitude. As they walked, Heiss noticed something strange and asked what was glowing, pointing to a spot nearby. Priscilla turned around quickly and, with astonishment, recognized that the eternal moongrass flowers were there. She explained, surprised, that during the day they didn't shine, which was why she hadn't been able to see them before. However, as they got closer, they noticed that many were wilting. Heiss and Priscilla realized that the dragon's blood had spread across the field, contaminating the plants. Priscilla was shocked to see that, even after all the fighting, the ingredient she needed was being lost before her eyes. Just when they thought all was lost, Heiss pointed to a corner, drawing her attention. Priscilla's eyes widened at the sight of a single flower still intact, glowing discreetly under the mist. Without a second thought, she ran over to it, picked up a small vial, and carefully put the plant away, her eyes watering, holding the vial tightly against her chest, knowing that now she had the chance to save her sister. After the battle with the dragon was over, Priscilla held up the vial with the eternal moongrass flower and told Heiss sincerely and gratefully that the flower belonged to him, since he had been the one to defeat the monster. Heiss watched her in silence, but Priscilla insisted that the mission was complete and that he had earned the flower, while she would look for more elsewhere if necessary. While they were talking near the entrance to the mountain path, a group of elves appeared calling for Priscilla. They were worried about her disappearance, and among them was a young man called Adra, who seemed to know her well. On seeing him, Priscilla was surprised and a little nervous, while Heiss just watched cautiously. Adra approached Heiss and confirmed his identity as the S-rank adventurer who had accompanied Priscilla to Gagazia. He then explained that she was not a simple elf, but the younger sister of Queen Alcera, the sovereign of the Igdra Forest Kingdom. Heiss was surprised by the revelation, while Priscilla just lowered her gaze without denying it. Adra then asked Priscilla if she had gotten the flowers she needed to cure her sister. Priscilla, with a tone of frustration, replied that unfortunately not, as the flower had withered due to the dragon's blood. Adra, in a more rational tone, said that perhaps it was time to give up, accepting her sister's fate. This made Priscilla react angrily, shouting if he really wanted her to let her sister die. Adra tried to justify himself by saying that this was Alcera's fate and that there was nothing he could do about it, as well as pointing out that they also needed to discuss the details of the arranged marriage between him and Priscilla. She was even more shaken by this imposition, and Heiss, realizing the situation, just put his hand on her shoulder, saying good-naturedly that it looked like she needed to leave, and said goodbye with a simple, "See you later, Priscilla." Priscilla, surprised by Heiss's calm demeanor, just watched as he walked off down the road alone, leaving behind the figure of someone who, even though he said he didn't trust others, had saved his life and respected his decision. She stood still, holding her spear tightly, silently observing the path he took, unsure if this was really a final goodbye. The morning after returning from her mission, Priscilla quietly entered the royal bedroom of Queen Alcera, her sister in the forest kingdom of Igdora. With a heavy heart and watery eyes, she approached the bed where Alcera lay and, holding back her tears, said in a broken voice that she hadn't been able to find the eternal moongrass flower, apologizing for having failed. Alcera, with a calm and tender smile, replied that everything was fine and that it was just fate at work. She then asked Priscilla to tell her all about her journey through the western and central lands, showing a sincere desire to hear about her sister's adventure. Priscilla nodded silently, but before she began, she said that she had brought something special. She then took the bottle with the bright flower, the eternal moongrass, out of her bag and handed it to her sister. Alcera's eyes widened in surprise and excitement, and she recognized the flower immediately. Her voice breaking, she confirmed that it was indeed the eternal moongrass, and Priscilla, smiling with tears in her eyes, whispered Heiss's name in gratitude. A few days later, Heiss was sitting in the guildmaster's room, drinking tea with a serious and quiet countenance. Master Geist commented with surprise that Heiss had technically failed the mission, even though it was only a formal request from the royal family. Geist added that because he had been so firm against the princess's presence, it would have been better if he had succeeded completely. Heiss, with his usual expression, replied that he just intended to carry on accepting missions and exploring dungeons as usual. Geist then said that, by coincidence, there was a new mission perfect for him, a newly discovered dungeon that needed investigating, and held out a scroll with the details. As Heiss said goodbye and turned to leave the room, a familiar voice called out to him. It was Priscilla, who had just entered. He looked at her in surprise, not understanding why she was there, while she, with a gentle smile and steady eyes, responded only to his presence. Heiss watched her in silence, not knowing what to expect, as she stared at him serenely. Priscilla stood in front of Heiss, holding a vial of eternal moongrass in her hands, and began to thank him sincerely. She explained that she had managed to heal her sister using the elixir made from the flower he had helped her obtain, and that Alcera was now well enough to return to her duties as queen. With a firm, emotional look on her face, she declared that she felt she owed him a great deal and wanted in some way to repay him for everything he had done. Heiss, with his always serious expression, asked her bluntly what she wanted now that she was free to pursue her life as she wished. Priscilla replied that, as a reward for his achievements, she had been released to continue her travels freely and had even managed to cancel her engagement to Adra. She said that she didn't want to force any closeness, but that she would like to accompany him on his journeys, even if they weren't officially partners, just as a companion he could talk to as much as he wanted. With a suspicious look on his face and no patience for sentimentality, Heiss refused outright, saying he wasn't interested. Even so, Priscilla kept a light smile, accepting the refusal without losing her good humor. As he walked away, she asked if he would at least agree to have a meal with her, saying that there was a good cafe nearby and that it would be up to her. Meanwhile, a sequence of scenes showed the remaining adventurers, including Sasha, Cress, Miwani, and the others, gathered together and ready to set off on a new mission of royal order, excited about their next adventure. With an energetic shout, Sasha led them out, saying that it was time to defeat the Crystal Golem. As the group of adventurers led by Sasha approached the entrance to the crystal mines, everyone was gathered and attentive. The mission given by the royalty involved defeating a highly dangerous crystal golem that had appeared in the area. In front of the cave entrance, Sasha sternly explained that the golem's body was extremely resistant and that it would be necessary to increase the power of the attacks in order to break through its defenses. Sasha then restated the plan out loud to make sure everyone was aligned. She explained that they would use Cress's double ability, which would create a duplicate of her to confuse the golem. Then Mayuani would use her magic to enchant the arrows with explosive spells. Robin, the group's archer, would shoot these enchanted arrows towards the enemy to weaken its defense. When the golem was hit, Sasha would advance with a direct hit, trusting that everyone would be covering his back in the process. As she spoke, the members of the group, Cress, Miwani, Robin, Heiss, and the other supporting adventurers, reacted with determined expressions. Miwani confirmed out loud that she was ready. Cress also stated that he was ready, and Sasha, seeing the cohesive group, gave the signal for the operation to begin. They all headed into the mine, where crystals glowed brightly and the walls reflected the light magically. Miwani commented on how beautiful the place was, while Robin explained that the ore there was of such high quality that anyone who tried to mine without permission would be executed without question. The group proceeded cautiously, observing the intense glow of the crystals and discussing the deeper layers, where the ores were even purer. Suddenly, Sasha pointed ahead and said she had spotted the golem. Miwani immediately asked everyone to stop while Robin got into position. An enormous crystal golem emerged from the shadows with a robust body made up of shiny, diamond-hard fragments and an empty but menacing gaze. The group was now facing the main challenge of the mission. The time had come to put the plan into practice. As the group advanced through the main area of the mines, Robin noticed something strange about the movement of the enemies. Counting quickly, he said that there were 7 crystal golems in the area. However, he explained that something was wrong. 5 of them seemed to be patrolling the mine area, walking in circles as if they were protecting some perimeter, while 2 others were standing guard at the back, near the processing zone. Cress asked directly what Robin meant by it being wrong. Robin, concentrating, said that the golem's movement was strangely coordinated, which was unusual for this type of creature. Sasha listened attentively, and Heiss added that golems were, in essence, simple monsters, created from ores and stones, and that they generally acted in an instinctive and disorganized way, without any kind of consciousness. The group was silent for a moment. Heiss analyzed the patterns and stressed that these creatures shouldn't be able to make strategic decisions, let alone position themselves tactically. That was definitely strange. Cress then asked Sasha what the group should do in the face of this anomaly. Sasha took a deep breath, steadied the sword in her hand, and, with conviction, replied that they would stick to the original plan. At Sasha's command, Cress activated her double ability, creating an identical copy of Sasha, who advanced side by side with the original. Miwani prepared herself quickly and channeled explosive magic into several special arrows that she had prepared in advance. She shouted to Robin that she was ready, and he, with a serious look on his face, drew his bow with precision and aimed at the center of the group of golems. With a shout of explosion, Miwani fired, and Robin, without hesitation, unleashed a burst of enchanted arrows that flew at speed in different directions. As soon as they hit the golems, a series of explosions lit up the inside of the mine. The combination of magic and brute force made an immediate impact, throwing crystal fragments everywhere. Sasha, taking advantage of the moment of confusion, advanced with his copy for the melee attack. The group had begun to execute the plan with precision, but the strange behavior of the golems still left a feeling of alertness in the air. Sasha, determined to go ahead with the plan, advanced alongside her duplicate summoned by Cress's double ability, and with a swift and precise movement, shouted the name of her special technique, Silver Flash Lotus Strike. With both versions of her attacking at the same time, a powerful wave of energy cut across the battlefield, making its way through the crystal golems. The force of the attack was so intense that the nearest golems were thrown far away, with deep cracks appearing in their bodies. Meanwhile, the support team continued to execute the plan, with Robin firing arrows enchanted by Mioane, each one causing coordinated explosions. The synchronization between the group members was perfect, and the golems began to fall one by one. With the field clear, Sasha declared the fight over. The others celebrated discreetly, especially Mioane, who praised Sasha's skill and was delighted with the power of the double. Cress, smiling, explained that although it was a powerful skill, he couldn't use it again until the next day, which limited its use in prolonged confrontations. While everyone was recovering, Sasha mentioned that she felt a strange presence coming from a passage at the back of the chamber, which immediately caught Heiss's attention. Even though it wasn't part of the original mission, Sasha said they couldn't just ignore the threatening aura. She ordered everyone to remain alert as they were going to investigate. The group followed the narrow path that led to the crystal processing area, where they were surprised by a demonic-looking young man sitting casually among the crystals. He greeted them with an enigmatic smile, and when asked by Sasha about his identity, he replied without hesitation that his name was Crane and that he was a demon. Heiss was incredulous at Crane's revelation, asking bluntly if he had really said he was a demon, as he knew the historical weight of that name. Sasha, serious and focused, confirmed that demons fought a great war against humans a long time ago, putting the fate of both peoples at risk. Heiss then explained that, after the end of the war, a powerful man separated the continent into two, the human kingdom and the demon kingdom, to keep the demons away. Heiss himself pointed out that, in theory, no one should be able to cross between the two kingdoms, which made Crane's presence a great mystery. Crane, smiling with superiority, mocked Heiss's intelligence and confirmed that demons really are dangerous, implying that their presence there was deliberate. Sasha, upon hearing this, immediately suggested that the group leave, realizing the risk of confronting someone of that race. Through a panel showing ancient ruins, the group reflected on how, during the war, a few demons faced tens of thousands of humans and still caused immense damage, revealing how absurdly powerful they were. Crane, with a nonchalant smile, said that he would let everyone go that day, and that they should thank the bespectacled boy in reference to Heiss. He then revealed that he had obtained the high-purity crystals he was looking for but didn't explain his purpose with them. Sasha insisted on knowing, but the demon only replied that they wouldn't understand even if he did. Crane mocked humanity, saying that they are like insects that are always chasing treasure. He then started to walk away, but Sasha firmly pointed her spear at him and demanded to know what he was up to. Crane dismissively replied that he was only exterminating an insect that had invaded the kingdom of Hebelk, referring to himself. As the tension grew, Heiss and Mioane stood guard, and Sasha activated her magical protection skill called Strength. Crane, surprised by the technique, praised it sarcastically, but then snapped his fingers with a menacing smile, saying that, in the end, it didn't matter. Crane snapped his fingers contemptuously and teased the group by saying that Sasha's magic was nothing compared to the abilities of a true demon. With a simple wave of his hand, he launched a powerful gust of wind that hit Sasha, throwing her against the wall and alarming everyone. Mioane desperately shouted her friend's name, while Sasha resisted the pain and prepared to counterattack. The demon, impatient, decided that he would deal with Mioane first, advancing towards her with absurd speed. But before it could hit her, Tycoon appeared with his shield, blocking the attack at the last second and shouting that he would never allow it. Crane was surprised, realizing that something was hijacking his control of the wind. With arrogance, he revealed that this was his ability, to manipulate the wind at will. With a gesture, Crane created a storm inside the warehouse, making wooden boxes and stones spin around his body as if he were in the center of a hurricane. Laughing, he said that he could destroy an entire city if he wanted to, and that the powers of demons were far superior to those of humans. Sasha stood her ground, facing the chaos around them, and confidently declared that strength wasn't everything in a battle. Even though she was impressed impressed by his skill, she affirmed that they could still beat him. Crane laughed scornfully, doubting what she could do. But before he knew it, an explosion hit him in the back, destabilizing him. Crane looked around, stunned, and noticed something amiss in the whirlpool he himself had created. Confused, he realized that MANHUA had discreetly launched an arrow with explosive magic into the middle of the objects he was manipulating. She smiled teasingly as she prepared another arrow, and Crane finally realized that he had underestimated the group. While the demon Crane was recovering from the surprise attack, he tried to strike back with his wind magic, pointing at the group and saying that he would return the blow. But before he could act, something unexpected happened. The attack he was preparing was interrupted by a powerful explosion, throwing shrapnel and dust all over the battlefield. Tycoon quickly raised his enchanted shield, gathering the group behind him, protecting everyone with a sturdy magical barrier. Crane was shocked to see that his power had been neutralized. Sasha then approached him confidently and explained that even if his power alone wasn't enough to defeat him, together, with teamwork, they became even stronger. With precision, she landed a direct blow that sent him reeling back, wounded and incredulous at the effectiveness of the coordinated attack. As Crane's body trembled, trying to resist, Sasha went on to say that this moment was proof that their union was capable of overcoming even a demon. Crane cried out in pain, staggered, and fell to his knees. Even though he was wounded and humiliated, his anger grew. With hatred in his eyes, Crane declared that he would not forgive what had happened. He threatened to destroy all of Sasha's friends, her entire country, and finally promised that he would kill her with his bare hands. He left his words as a grim warning before disappearing, covered by a gust of wind that enveloped the place and vanished from sight. Sasha watched the whirlpool disappear, serious and determined, knowing that this would not be her last encounter with the demon.